So today I want to talk about the Adult Interdependence Act of Alberta, Canada. It's part of a larger series that I'm doing right now to talk to people about what rights they have under Alberta, provincial, and Canadian law. Generally, I find that the common law can be pretty inaccessible, and after 5 years of studying it, there's still some aspects of it that I'm like. So I wanted to start making short instructional videos for people so that they could start to understand these big legal principles that can sometimes be a bit mind-boggling and are very relevant to day-to-day life. And so I thought I'd start with the Adult Interdependence Act because I've been talking to a lot of people lately about it and how it affects their life. So what is the Adult Interdependence Act? Well, it comes from this huge struggle that happened in the 80s and 90s in Canada, where same-sex couples were fighting for recognition of equal rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It was not considered a grounds for discrimination at the time. And we'll cover how precedent and cascading down from the Supreme Court and Charter of Rights and Freedoms down to the lower courts and lower legislation works. But basically, what happened in the end was that the Supreme Court of Canada determined that same-sex couples are entitled to partners' benefits the same way heterosexual married couples are. A little hilarious sidebar, when the Supreme Court of Canada handed down the decision that same-sex couples were entitled to benefits the same way heterosexual married couples are, the province of Alberta freaking lost it. Like, they were refusing to hand out any marriage licenses across the province. They just said marriage will be done then, because it was a point of principle that it had to be between a man and a woman. So, who's involved in an adult interdependent relationship? Well, basically, it's very similar to what your standard definition of common law is, that you're involved in a relationship, which can be a sexually intimate relationship. There is a degree of exclusivity to the relationship, that you participate in household activities together and have like cohabitating living arrangements. But it also applies to those who are not romantically involved with each other. It differs from your typical definition of common law in that it can be any people any adults who cohabitate who are not married. Other considerations include the degree to which a person participates economically or as a domestic unit, or which the partners operate economically or as a domestic unit, how you formalize your legal obligations, such as going out on leases together, being guarantors for bank loans. It also includes the extent to which you have direct contributions to each other's lives and your well-being, and that can be financial, but it can also be emotional support. It also looks at the degree of financial dependence and interdependence between people. Is there care of support of children going on, and whether or not there is joint ownership or acquisition of property. Now, a really important thing to note there is that it does not specify that these need to be romantic relationships. So to sum that up, basically, you have to be sharing lives, whether it's economically or emotionally invested, if you're caregiving to somebody, if you're looking after somebody's children, you have to be invested in somebody else's life and be cohabitating with them. The second part of that is that it has to be either going on for a minimum of 3 years, or if there is a permanent fixture within the household, such as a child. So what does this mean for the average person? Well, let's say you're a single person and you want to get an apartment and you want to move in with a friend and you plan on being there for a few years. Get that shit in writing, because there are consequences. Let's say, for example, if you've been living together for over 3 years, and you've been involved in each other's lives, you pay for groceries together, You do a lot of things around the house together. Perhaps you're their emergency contact. Well, if they become sick, you are financially responsible to support them. If you pass the 3-year mark, then you have to apply for home and auto insurance together and life insurance. And let's say there is a child involved, or you live with somebody, a single parent who has a child. If you help that child with their homework and babysitting and, caregiving around the house, you are acting instead of a parent. You are choosing to take on the responsibility of that child. And if you think back to what we just talked about, you don't even have to wait the 3 years then, because you are immediately acting instead of a child. You can be sued for child support to look after that child for after you've moved out. This is one of the reasons why it is incredibly important to always get things in writing. The delineation of, what are your roles and responsibilities after this point? What does this financial investment into them mean? You want to specify, if you're two adults living together, that buying groceries does not put you into the Adult Interdependence Act. Now, the Adult Interdependence Act doesn't last forever. If you live with somebody for 3 years, it doesn't mean that 25 years later they can come back and say, hey, you owe me 25 years of support. It doesn't quite work like that. The adult interdependence relationship ends after 1 year of living apart, and if you say it does. But it still would mean to providing financial support for somebody for a year if you separated. And this gets even further if you're involved in a romantic relationship. It does apply between any relationship, but that cat's not something. So if you're an Alberta resident who lives or cohabitates with somebody, you gotta ask yourself some important questions. And you have to be willing to put things down in writing. Let's say you're moving in with a partner and you guys start buying couches together or something like that and go halvesies on it. Consider the long-term implications of that. What happens if you break up? The switching costs go beyond who gets the couch, but it can go into a long-term dependency relationship. If you are living with a buddy, if you're living with a friend who has a kid, these are very, very important considerations when you're cohabitating with anybody. And it's important to understand how this affects your long-term decisions. Anyways, I've put some links down below, and I'd love to hear some feedback on what you think of this, and if you find it useful. If you want to go into more case law and what's been said in Alberta cases, I'd love to talk about that, or just anything. I think this is a discussion about rights in Alberta, and everybody's open and welcome to participate. I'd like to thank my teacher, Mary Wyatt Siblinger. It's been a while since I've been in your class, but thank you for introducing me to the Adult Interdependent Relationship Act and all the repercussions of it. I've put links down below for if you want to read it yourself, as well as reviews on a couple cases. And have a great day.